Good afternoon / good morning, Bayou Blitz family and Who Dat boys and girls. I am Bob Rose. I am one of your co-hosts for not only the Bayou Blitz podcast on Wednesday evenings, but your Saints News Network pregame and halftime specials. Joining me is my broadcast partner in all three duties, Brendan Boylan. How are you tonight, Brendan? Brendan.
Yeah, tonight. I can't say this tonight anymore. We're used to seeing your face at like 9 o'clock at night, at least our time. So, no, everything's great. Football is here for the New Orleans Saints. The team just arrived at Mercedes-Benz Stadium not too long ago. So, football's in the air, and I know that the Who Dat Nation is ready to go.
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, before we go any further, today is September 11th. It is the anniversary of one of the darkest days, yet one of the most galvanizing days in the history of this country. If you were alive then, I am positive that you have a very vivid memory of where you were on September 11, 2001. If your family or friends were directly affected by the consequences of that day, or in the days aftermath, my heartfelt condolences go out to you. I know you feel that pain every day, but let's remember how our country came together then, instead of the forces that divide us now.
Very well said. Very well said. Well, let's get to some football as the Saints are again in Atlanta to take on their bitter rivals, the Atlanta Falcons. If you guys have not already, while you're watching or listening, head over to saints.media. Bob did a great job looking at the offenses and defenses for both sides, how the pass offense and pass defense will match up for the Falcons and the Saints, along with the offensive forces. So go give that a read. John Hendricks has the pregame report out already. I got some fantasy stuff. I got XFactors. Kyle T. Mosley's got stuff out. So if you need to get caught up at all during or after our show, just head to saints.media. We got a lot there for you to read. But looking at this, Bob, week one, everybody's always looking forward to. There's always headlines in the offseason, and they kind of all come together to this one. And the bright side for New Orleans is it sounds like Tyrann Mathieu is going to play. He popped up on the injury report late because of illness. He traveled with the team. He is there at the stadium now. And Michael Thomas, questionable, but expected to give it a go. What's the biggest storyline in your mind, Bob? You could talk about the injuries. You could talk about the new acquisitions. You could talk about it being day one of the Dennis Allen era in New Orleans. But what is the biggest storyline headed into week one for New Orleans?
To me, for the Saints, the biggest storyline has to be, how this new look offense, how quickly it's going to click. I believe, and you and I have speculated about this all off season. I believe that it could take some time because we don't see starters play very much, if at all, in the preseason anymore. Now they're getting their reps in training camp. The Saints offense, particularly Jameis Winston and the new wide receivers. They were clicking early in camp, but we really haven't seen much game rep out of them. And they're going up against the Falcons defense, who I expect to be one of the worst in the National Football League this year. But week one, so many wild and crazy things happen throughout the NFL in week one. If your team gets blown out, don't throw in the white towel and start calling for the coaches or quarterbacks or anybody else's heads. If your team blows out somebody in week one, don't crown them for that Super Bowl championship just yet. As our friend Mike Detillier has said over the last few years, certainly, really the first 2 to 3 weeks of the NFL season is just an extension of the preseason. You're still getting to learn your teams. And if your team had a lot of changeover during the offseason, sometimes it takes even a little bit longer for them to click. Now, as you pointed out, Brendan, with the exception of the two safeties, Tyrann Mathieu and Marcus May, which is another area I'm closely watching today, there wasn't very much changeover on the defensive side. It's because of that we expect the Saints to, again, have one of the top-ranked defenses in the league. It's on the offensive side. James Hurst is opening the year as a starting left tackle. Most of us expected that. And even though he is a downgrade talent-wise from what Teron Armstead was and what we think Trevor Penning will be, James Hurst is a more than capable offensive lineman. He's going to be just fine at left tackle. Alvin Kamara, he's still in the building. And as long as he's still in the building, the Saints offense is going to run through him. But it's the wide receivers and quarterback Jameis Winston. That's the area that I think might have some early season hiccups. But again, outside of A.J. Terrell, the Falcons' very, very talented young cornerback. The Falcons just don't have much talent in their coverage units. So, the additions of Michael Thomas, and I say addition because he's played literally 2 quarters with Jameis Winston their entire careers. The addition of Jarvis Landry in free agency, the addition of Chris Olave as a first-round draft pick, that massively upgrades a Saints receiving core that we saw last year in shambles. And we know that Jameis Winston can be one of the most productive passers in the NFL. I'm looking forward to seeing how this offense, in particular the passing game, clicks against this Atlanta defense this afternoon.
Absolutely. And just to throw out the numbers, since you mentioned Michael Thomas not playing in such a long time, I have to go back into my notes here.
Oh, I got them all. I've written on it numerous times, as have you.
It has been since January 17th, 2021. It has been 602 days since Michael Thomas has suited up for a game, regular season, or playoff for the New Orleans Saints. That breaks out to 1 year, 7 months, 25 days. And if you guys just really want to get technical, that is roughly 52 million seconds since Michael Thomas has played a regular season or playoff game for the New Orleans Saints. Ian Rappaport reporting moments ago that he is playing today. Something that I'd say we were 99.9% sure that was going to happen, but official Michael Thomas is going to give it a go today. So with that, I'm going to get my fantasy little bit in. If you guys read or have not read, I do have some stardom sit-em for this week with 2 guys that Bob already mentioned that I think are must starts this week for New Orleans. One, Michael Thomas. You look at his career against Atlanta, and Bob did a great job pointing this out in one of his pieces earlier. Michael Thomas against Atlanta has been deadly. And remember, 2020, when he played just 7 games, Thomas was able to go for over 100 yards in both of those games against Atlanta. I think he's just a must start. It's correct me if I'm wrong, Bob, because I think you know him a little bit better than I do, but 5 times has gone over 90 yards against Atlanta, 7 times with at least 7 receptions. So if you're playing in a PPR league, this is a guy in Michael Thomas that's averaging somewhere, quick math, 18 points per game against Atlanta in his career. I think he's a must start this week. I also think that just for the sake of the team and for Michael Thomas himself, though there might be some issues gelling with this offense and these new weapons, I think getting him some receptions early is going to go a long way for his confidence. And I think that Pete Carmichael recognizes that he's going to be a target early and often for New Orleans. And on the other side of that, the guy throwing him the football, Jameis Winston, I think is a must start. And that is because of similar reasons. Hasn't played a whole lot, just 1 drive in the preseason. And you're going to want to get him going early and often. Look for some easy stuff, maybe some checkdowns to Alvin Kamara, get him in space, let him do his thing. But as soon as Kamara touches the ball, you don't know what's going to happen. I think Jameis is going to throw anywhere between 28, 32 passes today and hopefully a few touchdowns. I think he's a really good start, especially in deep leagues. If you're in a 12-team league, you're starting 12 quarterbacks. I do think Jameis is a top 12 quarterback in fantasy this week. Those are the 2 guys I'm recommending you definitely start. The one guy I say don't is Jarvis Landry, and that's because between 2015 and 2019, Landry was a top 20 receiver each of those years. The last 2 years, you've seen his numbers dip, and especially this new role in New Orleans where he's going to be limited to being essentially a slot receiver. Slot receivers don't get downfield a whole lot, and you look at Jarvis Landry's production throughout his career, he's not a real goal line threat. Right. Even in PPR leagues where he's going to get, maybe 4 to 5 catches a game, to me, that's still not enough to put him in your starting lineup, even as a flex option. So I'm staying away from Jarvis Landry the first couple weeks until you see a developed role in the Saints offense. And from there, you're going to be able to reevaluate, but do not start Jarvis Landry this week. Well, back to the game, away from fantasy football, the New Orleans Saints, let's talk defense. This is an Atlanta team that over the last 2 years has lost two of their cornerstones to their offense, Julio Jones and Matt Ryan. Drake London looks to be the number one receiver for Atlanta this season. He had some questions with his availability, but it looks like he's going to be giving it a go. Obviously, Kyle Pitts, if you watched any college football over the last few years, you know that Kyle Pitts is kind of a unicorn, for lack of a better term, with what he's able to do. And then, obviously, Marcus Mariota, the former number 2 overall pick, Heisman Trophy winner, getting a chance to rejuvenate his NFL career as a starter. He's the starting quarterback for the Falcons in this one. You and I have both highlighted the fact that with 2 safeties, you're going to have some coverage breakdowns, just in communication. Both brand new guys. Talk about Bradley Roby being elevated into the starting lineup this week as well. There's a lot of new faces communicating with each other. But where do you see Marcus Mariota, Drake London, Kyle Pitts, etc., being the biggest threats for New Orleans? And could a guy like Cordero Patterson find similar success to what he did against New Orleans last season?
Well, let's start with that. Let's start with Cordero Patterson. He and Kyle Pitts, for different reasons, are absolute matchup nightmares against most defenses that they play. And that included the New Orleans Saints in the team's first matchup last year. The two, I think Patterson only had like 9 carries for 10 yards on the ground, but he had over 100 yards receiving against the Saints. Pitts only had 3 catches in that upset win in New Orleans, but they went for 62 yards, and they were 62 big yards. What I noticed during that afternoon was that Pitts and Patterson both were often matched up on linebackers. And even though I love Demario Davis, and I love to see Demario Davis in coverage, I think he is one of, if not the best coverage linebacker in pro football. But you called Kyle Pitts a unicorn. I have said numerous times that Kyle Pitts is kind of the new age Shannon Sharp. He is just a puffed up, strong, fast, wide receiver. In a big tight end's body. So not even the superpowers of Demario Davis can match up against Kyle Pitts. And the Saints had all kinds of problems that afternoon with both Patterson and Pitts. In the second matchup, the season finale, where the Saints won, and really a game that was much easier than the 30-20 score would indicate. New Orleans limited Patterson and Pitts to a combined 3 receptions for 9 yards. I look for the combined production of these 2 players to be somewhere in between that today. And if it is somewhere in between or worse, then the Saints defense should roll. Because I do like Drake London. His USC college film reminded me of a little bit playing style-wise of some guy named Michael Thomas. And he's turned out to be pretty good in the NFL. London's critics coming into the draft said that he lacked separation. Thomas's critics coming into the NFL said that he lacked separation. London's plus marks, I guess for lack of a better term, were that he has great hands and he's a physical receiver who tries to dominate the intermediate zones. If you're a Saints fan tuning into this broadcast, I don't need to tell you all about Michael Thomas's exploits. We know what he can do. I'm not comparing Drake London to the next Michael Thomas yet. I'm just telling you what kind of attributes he brings to the table. But again, he's a rookie wideout playing in his first NFL game and has been limited the last half of training camp with injury. This offense is still going to go through Patterson and Pitts. Now, the Saints cannot let the complementary weapons hurt them. Brian Edwards is another physical guy who works the middle of the field extremely well, so don't sleep on him. And Damian Williams, the running back that the Falcons signed this offseason, he's a better between the tackles runner than Cordero Patterson. And he might actually ultimately get more carries depending on the flow of this game. Mariota brings a different kind of skill set than we're used to seeing from Matt Ryan. Matt Ryan was a big, tall pocket presence, with outstanding accuracy when he was on. Mariota is not going to be mistaken for Matt Ryan in any of those categories, but what Mariota brings is big play potential, both with his legs and running the ball, and his escapability and eluding the pass rush, getting outside the pocket and finding targets downfield. That's where the Saints' new safety duo, who I've said numerous times, are athletic upgrades over what Marcus Williams and Malcolm Jenkins were. But schematically, that's where the hiccups could come into play on a broken play where the quarterback breaks containment. So the Saints edge rushers in particular are going to have to be very much more disciplined in their rush assignments to keep Mariota from escaping too often. Because when that happens, even out of the best secondaries, you could see coverage breakdowns. Out of a team breaking in, really 3 new starters, if you count Bradley Roby, since Roby didn't play much last year, is without Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, is without Paulson Adebo. That's where you could run into some problems, even with what I think is a pedestrian Atlanta receiving corps.
Yeah, this is a New Orleans Saints defense that, remember, last year was ranked in the top 5 total defenses in the NFL. But like you said, Bob, when you have new pieces, you never know what's going to happen. Let's flip it to the New Orleans Saints offensively. We already talked about those receivers and new weapons for Jameis Winston coming in. This is a team that I've written in the past and said this, you could almost consider this a brand new team because of the injuries last season, players coming back, a guy like Andrews Pete, a guy we haven't really talked about yet on the show. It's going to be his first game back from injury from a year ago. You already talked about James Hurst. There's question marks with Cesar Ruiz. Eric McCoy just got a big extension. Congratulations to him. But this is a group that hasn't had a whole lot of time together. I think on paper, you're looking at this team saying they should be able to put up points against an Atlanta defense that is going to be without their leader in Deion Jones and doesn't have a whole lot of threats across, or at least on paper. So for New Orleans to get off to a strong start, does it start with Alvin Kamara and Mark Ingram, or are you looking towards somewhere else?
I think it does start with Alvin Kamara and Mark Ingram. Mainly because at near the onset of the show, we talked about Jameis Winston needing to establish the chemistry with his wide receivers. And while, these guys are all pros, so I do think that will happen relatively quickly. The New Orleans Saints are still, for the most part, going to want to establish control of the line of scrimmage and establish balance against really every single opponent that they face this year. I look for that to be especially true against an Atlanta Falcons team that doesn't have a lot of talent in the front 7 either. Grady Jarrett is the one name that jumps off the page to me. Even with some young players, the Falcons are extremely thin in that unit from the looks of, from what I've seen anyway. So establishing balance allows you to wear down a defensive front. It allows you to set up play action, and we know how good a play action passer Jameis Winston is. It's a hell of a lot easier to establish chemistry with your wide receiver when a play action fake is able to open up a receiver or two, down the field, with a yard or 2 separation between coverage because a safety bit on a play action fake or a linebacker got caught looking into the backfield. So that's why I think that it does start with Alvin Kamara and Mark Ingram. It doesn't mean that both of these guys need to rush for 100 yards or the team as a unit needs to rush for 200 yards. That does mean that this threat of a ground game needs to be established early on, so the New Orleans Saints offense, especially their offensive line, can dictate the tempo of the game.
Well, quick note, if you guys haven't seen it yet, Mark Ingram will be wearing 22. Jarvis Landry will be moving to 5, which opens up number 80, and we can talk about that on Wednesday, but that's a fun topic considering Twitter. But let's go ahead and jump into this. The inactives list is officially out for the New Orleans Saints per our John Hendricks. The following players have been ruled out for today's matchup. 3 that we already knew about: Traquan Smith, Dwayne Washington, and Paulson Adebo will be missing today's action. 3 more have been added. It's going to be Wyatt Davis, the offensive lineman that was just picked up earlier this week, Nick Vanette, and one of Bob's personal favorites, Nyo Passanio. Those 3 will be inactive. Which means Tyrann Mathieu and Michael Thomas are good to go. And for the most part, the Saints pretty healthy going into week number 1. That's not the case for every team in the league, but certainly a positive note for New Orleans. Bob, I've talked about this a couple times this week. You've probably talked about it more because you've been on a podcast tour. You guys can get your official merch and t-shirts at bobrose.com. I'm just kidding. But Bob has seriously been on every podcast you could think of this week. But nonetheless, this is a Saints team that has obviously a long history with the Atlanta Falcons. It's arguably the biggest rivalry in the NFL, certainly the biggest in the NFC South. The Falcons lead the all-time series by 1 game. The Saints an opportunity to tie this week. But when asked about
2 if you count postseason, sorry to interrupt, 2 if you count postseason, but yeah.
That is correct. Well, but see, Bob, I was trying not to talk about that. The fans that remember that, they don't want to talk about that. The early 90s, it was a different time. But this is a matchup that has brought intense game after intense game after intense game, regardless of how good the Saints are, how bad the Falcons are. Earlier this week, you gave us a prediction. I believe that you had the Saints winning something along the lines of like 31-17 or somewhere in that bubble. Are you sticking by that prediction? Because personally, I think this is going to be a game that, despite on paper the Falcons looking like one of the least talented teams in the league, I still think this is going to be a tight one.
In my official prediction, which Jordy Haltberg usually calls me out on the carpet on Tuesday afternoons, that's awful early to be making a prediction. But my prediction out of the gate was Saints 31, Falcons 13. As sorely tempted as I was to make the prediction Saints 28, Falcons 3. It's very, very rare that any team holds another team completely out of the end zone in this day and age of the NFL. And yeah, Brendan, I agree with a lot of the points that you make, that it would not shock me if this were a close game. And I said in our staff chat, just about an hour or so ago, that I have a funny feeling about this game. The Saints should blow them out, but I have a weird feeling. I still can envision a very close, tightly fought game with a few mistakes on both sides through 2, maybe 3 quarters. I just think the Saints defense is just that much better than what the Falcons offense is. And conversely, the Saints have too much talent on paper going up against what again we expect to be a poor Falcons defense. I think talent overcomes in the end. It's going to be, if it is a close game through 3.5 quarters, a lot of times that comes down to coaching. And Dennis Allen, while I have faith in him as the head man on the sidelines, many don't. So the onus usually falls on coaching in the case of tight games. But again, the Saints, for as much star power as we talk about, they also have a lot of experience in close games. Mm-hmm. And I think that will overcome to the point where I could see New Orleans grabbing maybe a defensive score late or a special team score late to widen the margin of victory a little bit further than what the actual competitive phase of the game is. So yeah, long story short, I'm going to stick to I'm going to stick to my guns and still say Saints 31, Falcons 13.
And I'm going to go a little bit closer. And on our show on Wednesday, I had the same thought as you, but a little bit different. You said the Saints grabbed something late to extend it, make it look a little further apart in competitiveness than it actually was. I have it the opposite, is Atlanta scoring late to bring the score closer to make it look more competitive. I have the Saints 27-20. I think there's going to be some defensive breakdowns. I think that's just going to be a natural part of the game, but I still think that for the most part, New Orleans dominates majority of the game, and maybe there's a garbage time touchdown to bring it closer than it was. But needless to say, I think we both have the Saints winning today. I released XFactors earlier today, and if you guys haven't read it, go read it. But Bob, for you, if the Saints win this game, it's going to be because of who or what?
The New Orleans defensive line. And I know we talked ad nauseum about receivers earlier. I think that's the biggest key offensively, along with establishing control of the line of scrimmage. But the New Orleans defensive line, their front seven in general, have dominated the Falcons in most of the last decade. We're seeing a different name at quarterback, which a lot of people are making a big fuss about, and maybe a little bit worried about athleticism, as I pointed out. The Falcons still have the same porous and putrid offensive line, the same offensive line that Cam Jordan and Marcus Davenport have feasted on in the last 5 or 6 meetings. In the last 9 times Jordan has faced Atlanta, Yeah, he has a ridiculous total of 15 sacks and 31 pressures in 9 games. Now, Ryan is gone, which Cam has joked about a time or two on Twitter this offseason. But again, that's the same offensive line up front. The Falcons are tweaking and making changes on both sides of the ball, but they did not change the most important position in football. I see the Saints defensive line. They have to remain disciplined in the rush to keep Mariota from breaking containment. That's going to be a challenge. Outside of that, I think they'll shut down the Atlanta run game, which we don't expect to be very powerful at all this season. And as long as they can disrupt Mariota.
Looks like we lost Bob for a second. We'll let him come back into it. But for me, I think when it comes to New Orleans and winning this ball game, I think it does start and stop with the receiving core. We already talked about that. Personally, I think Michael Thomas is going to be a big X factor. I think a guy like Bradley Roby, who's going to be getting the start today, for the injured Paulson Adebo, I think that's going to be a big thing. And though this is a Atlanta team that doesn't have a whole lot of threats on the outside, I still think when you have a veteran presence like Bradley Roby, remember a former first-round pick all the way back in 2014, I think that a player like that and the veteran leadership is going to go a long way. He's going to make some plays for the Saints today. And I think one thing that we haven't talked a whole lot about is Bob Rose returns from the I don't know how I want to put this, but the interwebs.
The Pittsburgh bits.
Oh, okay, I was going to say the interwebs of streaming can be a little confusing sometimes for everybody. But one thing we haven't talked about, Bob, and going through some of my X factors is, and I think when you look back at last season, a lot of the attention for New Orleans goes, well, they started 4 quarterbacks, and I've definitely beat that into the ground this offseason as well. Mm-hmm. But they also started like 4 or 5 kickers. And Will Lutz is healthy. He's ready to go. I think that's going to be a big factor as well, because if we learned anything last year or anything over the years that you and I have covered football at any level, special teams is extremely important. Making your kicks is extremely important. And getting a guy like Will Lutz back, who's been the model of consistency for a New Orleans team that had a carousel of kickers under Sean Payton, I think that's going to end up paying dividends in this game and throughout the entire season. Do you see that the same way?
Yeah, absolutely. And Peyton's carousel of kickers is very interesting because Lutz has been a mainstay since 2016, which basically means I think Sean Payton went through 9 to 11 kickers in his first 10 years in New Orleans. So wrap your mind around that. But Lutz is one of the game's most clutch kickers. The man has ice water in his veins. If there's any player in the NFL that I want making a kick, a field goal for me with no time left on the clock, it's this man. It's Will Lutz. But not only that, he has incredible accuracy from long range, almost guaranteeing his team points shortly across midfield. You cannot discount that advantage, especially if you have a sputtering offense, but you have a lot of confidence in your defense. That will empower a coach to make a decision like, will go out and kick this 55, 60-yard field goal. I have confidence that you'll make it, but I'm still going to let you try, because if you, on the off chance that you miss it, I have a good enough defense that I don't mind giving the ball up at midfield, because I have confidence that they'll stop them. But again, more often than not, Lutz comes through in that situation. So you can't discount a guaranteed 3 points. If your offense manages to pick up a first down or 2.
Absolutely. Well, we're running out of time for our pregame show. Before we give you where you can follow us, and then of course you can join us back here for halftime. Bob, if you were a betting man, who scores the first touchdown of the season for New Orleans?
Ooh, that's a good one. And I used to be a betting man, but not a good one. So, whatever predictions I make, folks, just don't take that to the bank necessarily. First touchdown for the New Orleans Saints will be Michael Thomas in 2022.
I like it. I think I'm going to go with the easy one. I'm not sure what the betting odds are, but I'm sure this is the favorite. I'm going to go with Alvin Kamara, who has had a pretty good career against Atlanta.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely has something to prove this year, a chip on his shoulder, and he's approaching the all-time touchdowns record for New Orleans as well. So he's going to be sniffing out the end zone. We'll let some of our fan favorites give their insight. John Butler, Alvin Kamara, Scoob, Mark Ingram. So
Ingram's a good one. Ingram's a sneaky good pick. But come on, folks. You got to go out on a ledge here. Give me a Juwan Johnson. Give me a Taysom Hill. Give me a Tony Jones Jr.
I was gonna say Adam Troutman would be one that would kind of get everybody, but nonetheless, that's what we're gonna go with. You got Mike Thomas, I got Alvin Kamara. Before people join us for halftime, I don't know who in the world doesn't follow you on the World Wide Web at this point, being so popular this week. But where can people find you?
And I'm greedy, folks. I want more followers. Brendan, I want more followers for Brendan. Even if he's not going to beg for it, I'll beg for him.
Thanks.
But seriously, thank you all for following us. Not only Brendan and certainly myself, and I can be followed on Facebook, Bob Rose, or over on Twitter at BobbyR2613. But a special thank you for everybody that follows us on the Saints News Network at Saints News on Twitter, and or our Bayou Blitz Facebook page and Bayou Blitz Twitter page, which is at Bayou Blitz Pod. If you don't follow, what are you waiting for? You're doing us a big favor, and it allows you to get in touch with other Saints fans. And we are one big family. And speaking of one big family, doing so, retweeting our work, commenting, sharing with friends, sharing with family, sharing with Saints fans who aren't real adept into social media, kind of dipping their foot into the pool. That enlarges your family. That empowers us, which empowers you.
I want to share this too because this is an interesting one. Scoob also threw Olave out there. That'd be a sneaky good one. Scoob also says he only does YouTube, stranger danger. Well, I understand.
I do.
Who dat Sean?
Who dat Sean?
Myself, you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram right there at BT Boylan. Like Bob said, you can share all of our work all over the World Wide Web, Saints.media, to check out some of our articles this week. Catch up as we have about an hour until kickoff, roughly. But again, you guys can catch us here at halftime. Bob and I will be sharing that link. So if you need a way to get back to us, you got to kind of follow us. It kind of goes hand in hand, right, Bob? So we'll be sharing that link. We'll see you guys for halftime. We hope that all of you enjoy kickoff of the 22 NFL season for the New Orleans Saints. And until we see you in a few hours, remember to find peace, spread love, and practice positivity. Thanks for tuning into the Bayou Blitz. We'll see you in a couple hours, folks.